We landed in Kunming, China, and that's where I hit the ground, and this is where the story takes off, and the pictures that I took while I was in China. I bought a camera over there. It cost, I say, $49,000, but that was in Chinese money. My actual cash outlay in American money was about $35, so I got a very fine camera with a lot of quality for a very low price, and that would go with the show. Now we're showing some idols that were on the way up to a place called Black Dragon Pool. I had many Chinese friends that took me in sightseeing all over that area, and this is one of the magnificent places. This was on a trail going up on the way to Black Dragon Pool, and this is a set of idols that they stopped off and paid homage to, I guess I'd say, on their way up. Here's another set, not as quite as deluxe as the other. You notice that there's a little pot in front of there, and then you can see in the pot a little bit of stick sticking up, and a little on the side. Those are punks, 4th of July punks, as we lack firecrackers in this country, and it's supposed to be incense as a donation to those idols. Now this is myself standing in front of the middle gate of what's called the Copper Temple, which was in that area. It was the culmination of that trip there, actually. And there's 3 entrances to the temple. There's the outer gate, and then there's the second gate here, and then in the background you can see the final gate going into the Copper Temple. That's the inside that gate, and you can see the final gate there. There's looking towards the inside. This temple was beaten out by hand entirely by smiths, coppersmith that made this temple. It's 700 years old. You can see it's well tarnished. Now this is looking the other direction. Down there in the middle of the door you'll see a column standing up there. Usually that column goes clear across the door, but in this temple they didn't do it, and it's a spirit screen to keep the evil spirits out, but they have to go around. Evil spirits travel only in straight directions. And this is the Copper Temple right in here. You can see the stone floors and the nice carving. That was marble on the floors of the temple. You can see marble slabs and the fences up there by the temple. That's looking from the temple in the other direction. That little flag there up at the top is beaten entirely out of copper. And a little incense thing off to the left there. This is some intricate carving in one of the buildings in the temple area. Now this is the Black Dragon Pool itself. It was before you get to the Copper Temple. But anyway, that was a rich person had this park. And he committed suicide here over political problems. As a lost face, I guess, and decided to take him and his family with him and committed suicide. And this course is dedicated to him. Here's one of the temple porches. You see on this end a triangular gong, then a bell, and then on the far end is the beaten drums. You see the carvings in the wood up above, which is quite ornate. This is inside the temple. Now you can see the god that's in the middle. It's gilded with gold, not solid gold by any means. And on each side there's some ferocious guardians that have swords and so forth in their hands. And they're supposed to drive off the evil spirits from getting around there. This is myself outside of that temple, standing by an incense pot. You can see the burnt sticks up on the top. These are those ferocious idols that were back there at the opening door, just as you go into the door. You had to go toward them to get into the main of the first gate, go through the first gate. And of course, you can't tell that they have swords in their hands because the one on the right is pointing his sword directly at you from his left hand. The other one has some kind of a flailing mechanism to drive off the evil spirits, and they have ferocious looks. And they do the scaring job on part of it. They're on both sides. Now this is away from there. This was near our hostel. Now we lived in hostels that we had rooms, individual, not for individuals, but we had I think there was 4 of us, 5 of us maybe in that room, and we had servants that did our laundry, made our beds, swept our floors, built our fire in our room, and waited on us in any particular need. If we had to have something done that we couldn't do for ourselves. That road you see going from right to left is the main highway, you might say, and a little, what you might say is a path leading off in the background on the right is a typical way of getting from one village to another. And it's kind of the wet season a little bit. You see they're doing laundry down there in that water. The rice is just coming at the end of its growing period, and it's going to be drained pretty soon for drying out and harvesting. This is a traveling restaurant. Of course, you don't want to buy anything from those. It's so unsanitary, the flies and everything. But you can see corn being grown in the background, however. This is the typical road between villages during the wet season. You can see the rice on the side, and it's starting to be drained. It's, imagine what it is when it's really raining around there, but it doesn't rain an awful lot there throughout the whole year. It's just to have a particular little wet season corresponding to the monsoon in India with a lot less rainfall, and but they don't have any well-built roads, so the base that hold up, and of course it's just mud, a natural soil, and oxen drawing carts through it leaves those ruts. There's a coming into Kunming, China there, and that's one of the ancient canals. And this is probably the ancient part of the city. And most of Kunming was quite ancient. It's an old city. And that's the canal coming into it. This is the main street, one of the main streets. It was Jingbalu Street. That's one of the towers that where the city, the majority of the city is. It's a little bit outside of it, but it's, you climb that tower, you get something like this. And look down there, and you see that street goes down there, oh, I would say 1.25 miles or so. And there's another street, you might say, that's the dimension of the town is about the same the other way. And it's well, I would say it's about 4 times the area of Arlington where I live, where we have about 2,000 here in Arlington. They had 500,000 living in that place. There's a family in each one of those rooms usually. They're so crowded, refugees and just crowded conditions. because they can't afford to have individual homes. That's a little temple out in the middle of the rice fields. I thought I'd get some pictures of some idols down there, but it was stacked to be used with bombs. It was used as storage of bombs. There's a merchant selling oranges and tomatoes, and then the far basket is French buns. The French Indochina Railway ended up in Kunming. Here's the flower market in Kunming. There's a big circle there that goes around. There's flowers all the way around. Peddlers bring their flowers in and sell them. There's a load of stone going out to the construction at our airfield. That was taken off of a mountainside, which you'll see later. That's Jingbaloo Street again, and there's a policeman on a pillbox there with the traffic signals up above, but there wasn't enough electricity to run them. That's myself in a rickshaw just posing. See oranges in the background. The oranges are very good. The fruit like that was good. Of course you could peel it so it would be sanitary. There's a civil service employee of the city of Kunming. They sell water there at $1 a bucket. Of course that's real cheap, American money, but still the houses didn't have any plumbing in them. I would say about 95% of the houses and buildings didn't have any plumbing in them. There was some luxurious ones that were built later, and they had some plumbing in them. But that's where the ordinary people got their water. This is our home sweet home. I think my room was fourth one down. 1, 2, 3, 4. One with a little white spot in the window. Now those walls are about 2.5 feet thick, made of adobe, tile roof. You entered from one end and in the middle and the other end. And right there in the foreground is a little mound you see just under the first window there, and that's a grave. They pile their caskets on the top of the ground and cover them that way. There's the mighty warrior standing in front of our P-40. That was a good plane, but it was outmoded. We had to use those until about 44, and they were replaced by P-51s later, which were an up-to-date plane. But we still, with those planes, we shot down the Japanese about 10-1. General Chennault had very good tactics. Of course, that's me standing by it. There's, we were playing baseball, and right there in front of the long line, I'll point him out to you, was General Chennault. He was pitching the opposite team. That's General Chennault right there. That's General Chennault pitching. Those were bombed out barracks in the background. And of course we let him win. I don't know whether we let him or not, but he did pitch, and we played the 14th Air Force headquarters. He was started the original AVGs, which were the Flying Tigers of legend, before we entered the war. And then when the war started, well, they transferred nearly all of them over to him, with him, and to form what's called the 14th Air Force, and we still called ourselves the Flying Tigers. This is an oxen coming down the way. He's been plowing in one of the fields or going out to plow one. You can see the little village in the background. They're all clustered together in villages, usually a protected wall around them. This one had a wall around about 2 sides of it, 2.5 sides. See, on the right side there is this thick sown rice. Well, they dig that up and transplant it like you see it on the left side. They do it all by hand, and it matures there to where you saw it before. Oops, no, there, that's right. Anyway, here comes the kids. So we approach the village, and here comes the kids. They, "Hey, Joe," they say, "Tieti, chewing gum, tieti." Tieti was cigarettes, and chewing gum was, of course, chewing gum. They pronounced it that way, but we didn't have any with us, and we didn't have any cigarettes, of course. Well, they cussed us out in the American language. They referred to our canine ancestry and invoked the curse of deity on us. If you want to translate that into cuss words. There's a village gate. Oh, there you can see where the wall is, and the wall on the other side. And the houses formed a wall around most of the village, except on that side where that last picture was. There's an old gentleman in the village come out to greet us. You can see his long pipe there. He puts tobacco in. And he wanted to invite us in for tea, but we didn't go in. There's our recreation hall, Tiger Den. One side was church, the other side was gambling. The right was church, I think, and the left side was gambling, or vice versa. And then in behind there was an auditorium for showing movies. There's a group of Chinese friends. Now, the lower left side, the man squatting there was Mr. Wong Chi, and he was a very hospitable guy. He was quite a friend. In fact, I got things that I bought under his direction, and he would send me some things after I got home, especially a little idol that I can tell you about later. And then the rest of those people are very educated and high-up Chinese. The one on the left there, standing behind the girl, he was Mr. Chi. He was a professor in college, a very dignified fella. And next to him, I can't remember his name. The one in the sombrero was Mr. Wu, I think it was. He was a journalist. He later came to the United States and took journalism in some university in this country, in Midwest, Chicago or someplace in there. And that young lady standing in the middle in the light-colored dress, she was the daughter of a 4-star Chinese general. And I think she could speak English very well, but it was beneath her dignity to speak to an American soldier, especially the rank of just a staff sergeant. And the rest of them were friends that of the other people. I can't remember all their names. This is a Hot Springs Hotel. It was built up the road a ways from Kunming and had hot springs in the rooms. I just went to visit the hotel. I didn't stay there. It was kind of a recreational area. It was built for the original AVGs, High Tigers then, and we used it too if we wanted to pay the price. But I didn't care. I didn't go there. I just went on an excursion up there with the Red Cross. And, here's a cave. There was 3 caves in that area, and they were natural caves, and 2 of them were nice and cool inside, but the 3rd one was hot, like steam heat in the walls from the hot springs that are in the vicinity. There's an outside. This is a temple that Mr. Wong took me to. I can't exactly off my mind remember the name of this temple, but it was a very important temple. It was a Buddhist temple. You see the soldier standing again in the front there. This little outside house. There's always 3 entrances to a temple usually, and this is the first entrance. Of course, I went in there, and then this is looking from the first court, looking to that other building, the roof of that other building. And then here's myself in the inner court, and this is this Chinese Buddhist monk. He wanted to have his picture taken with me, so I posed with him, my buddy, and took our picture. In the background, under the shadow there, you can see figures sitting all around there. You'll see some pictures of those somewhere. Now this Buddhist monk here, there's another temple in the area. It's a very famous temple. In fact, it's Temple of the Iron Peak is the name of it, I think. And I went over there to visit with that gang of Chinese friends. We were headed that way. And sure enough, there he was again. He had gone over there from that other temple. He recognized me, and he of course, we couldn't converse with each other, but he waved me in, invited me in to have tea with him and everything. We couldn't converse, but we smiled and bowed, had our tea, and then of course I left him and joined my other buddies to see the rest of the thing. And boy, there was a a Buddhist idol in there. It must have been 50 feet high. It's a huge thing. And the guardian, monster guardians, you might say, keep the evil spirits out, were real high too. In fact, they appeared in one of the National Geographics that I have. That's a vertical picture, and I hope it shows in the picture. Give it shows enough, I guess. Yeah. Well, here's the courtyard again, and there's real landscape. The dude, real nice guy. That's a Buddhist monk, with, you might say, communion inside. This had to be handheld, and I had a hard time keeping it so it'd be sharp enough to recognize. In the back was an idol, the main idol. It was just getting re-gilded, most of it. There was platforms around. I dodged those to get those pictures. There's in the same vicinity, under those porches that I had talked about before, was this idol. It's had a little bit of an Indian influence. That's typical in India. And the incense pot, of course, in front. Now there's the happy god of fertility. And Mr. Wong sent me a little ceramic statue of that when I got back in China. Here at home, he sent that to me. Here's the figurines that are in there. Boy, what a tremendous art that was. Just lifelike and life-size, and just great work that they did with those statues that they had around that porch. I didn't take a lot of them, but I just took those two to illustrate some of the best and tremendous art that was put into those things. Now this is in Kunming, and this is a canal that goes out from Lake Kunming into the city of Kunming. This is the ancient China on the right-hand side. They don't waste a thing. That straw is from raising rice, and they save it for making mats, or use it for fuel, or other things that it can be woven into. Even use it for parts of the sails in their boats. There's a boat there with a load of rocks going out to the construction of our airfield. There you can see the sail. It's got some of that rice straw into a sail, and the mast, of course, out of a regular tree, probably a eucalyptus, and then the cross parts could even be bamboo. Not sure. There's a boat. Boats loaded with rock. You can see that mountain in the background. That's called Shishan. The temple I was telling you about was off on the right-hand side, just off the picture. I think it's in there, pretty close. And we walked all the way from the temple up that mountainside to see the sights, and Buddhist monks had carved a path out of the face of that cliff, and at the end, they produced a room there at about 20 by 20, where they had some idols in it. And the head of the group, or main person in there, that had it built, or built it, immortalized himself by jumping off a cliff and committing suicide as a sacrifice to a project, I guess. Now that's from the position up on that mountain. That's Lake Minghu, or Kunming Lake, I guess. They call it both kind of names. And way off in the background there is where the canal came into it. We took our canal off through there to the left. And there's a canal again. You see the eucalyptus trees on the left, and you can see the ancient part on the right and the refugees' homes on the left. Quite modern looking, for that area. They come in from Hong Kong. There was our engine. That lady rode us up and down that canal, and it wasn't a very short distance either. It was well over a mile, I think, or more. This is the jumping off place where we got off. The park there, the park was called Low State Park. You see the ancient houses there made out of adobe and straw. Some had a tile roof and some had straw roofs. There's some more boats loaded with rock. There's the pavilion, tea pavilion there at Low State Park. Beautiful place. They knew they had great artistic ability in placing things. There is a merchant with $100 bills in her hand. She's selling little mandarin oranges and peanuts. There's a tobacco pipe. It's a water pipe. That stem reaches down below the water line and touches a pump to the tobacco. It sucks it in. You hear it gurgle and he gets filtered smoke. The doctor told him to keep away from tobacco, I guess. There is what they call a honey bucket. She's fertilizing the vegetables. There's a little baby asleep on her back. Back in the background there are some hostels that were built. Kind of after we'd been there a while. Living quarters for some of the troops. They're different from the hostels that we were living in. Ours were the old ones. Ours was nice though. And those are made out of a very soft type of brick. Now this is where Mr. Wong took me down to a village that wasn't too far from Kunming. Chennault, I think was the name of it. Where was it? Yeah, it was Chennault, I think. Or Chongqing. But anyway, no, it wasn't Chongqing. But anyway, that's the wall that was completely around that village area. And it's pretty high. You can see by the height of the people against it. On the right side is a building that was a fortress and spread across the front of the gate. You see the holes sticking out there. They guarded themselves against bandits. Also was spread across the opening in the gate there because evil spirits can't turn corners. It's what kept them from going and having a direct shot into the city. There's the inside of the wall. It's built up with earth underneath. Of course, in the ancient days, they shot their bows and arrows off those slots. There's the outside of the wall again. About where you can see where the buildings ended. That's where I took the other picture at the inside of the wall. Here's we've been there for about a year and a half. The Americans and the British recaptured, and the Chinese recaptured the Burma Road, and this was the celebration in town of the first convoy that came over the Burma Road. And those sticks there has firecrackers on them. They light those firecrackers, a long string of them, and they let them go and celebrate. And there's the jeeps coming down the road, and that blue smoke is the firecracker smoke. Boy, the Chinese were real happy about that, having a land. We didn't have to fly in our supplies anymore. There's a convoy, and there on the left is the Red Cross building that was built when I was there. The truck is hauling a Da Pao, a cannon. That's what they called cannon, 75mm cannons. There's about 500 trucks, I think, came in on that convoy. They brought over 1,000 trucks altogether, and then they closed the Burma Road down. It wasn't practical to bring trucks over. It was quite a hazardous road, twisting and everything, and they put a pipeline over it to bring in the fuel for the airplanes and so forth. That was more efficient, I guess, than hauling it over. You see the power pole there is made out of concrete. There's the convoy, some more of it. That's one of the biggest buildings they had in town there. There's a few others that are pretty much the same size, but those survived the bombings. The main part of this place where it was bombed was built more modern. There's a C-46 taken off from the airfield. You can see the color of the soil under the wings. Quite red. Reddish color. There's a funeral. They're white because they're mourning color. Now this is the modern part. This part of the city had been bombed out before I got there, and it was rebuilt in modern style. Not very stiff construction. I don't know whether it can stand an earthquake or not. That's, Cobblestone Street was still there, however. 1942 Buick, or was it? I think it was a 42 Buick was sitting there. There was 3 of them brought in over the Burma Road before the Japanese captured it. They were selling for $130,000 a piece when they come over. Of course, they were about a $3,000 or $4,000 vehicle in the United States. The big rich guys had them. There's a lady doing her laundry. I was going to take a picture of her doing it. She didn't like it at all. She started to run, so I turned around, but I was still pointing the camera at her, only did it at right angles the way I was looking. She didn't know I was taking her picture. This is up at a rest camp area. This little girl standing on a newly made grave. The boy on there is right next to it. He's right off the trail there. That trail you see going off behind him is the Marco Polo Road. There'll be some more to say about that, show about it. This is rest camp. This is early morning in the sun. The sun was shining. It was quite red because of the earliness of it. That's Lake Minghu. This is early morning. It was beautiful up there, but there wasn't much trees. So high. It's about, well, the hills behind it were easily 10,000 feet. I think the lake was about 8,000 foot level. And we got American food there. We lived differently there than we did among the Chinese. The construction of the buildings are about the same, adobe. And the oil, the land around there was quite red from iron in the soil. This is up behind the rest camp. And there's a little village where the rice paddies terraced on down the slopes. That's climbing the hill. And you can see the Marco Polo Road down there, where you see the string of trees crossing the path down there is where that grave was. That little etching there that goes into a carved out trail in that hill to get down level enough for rest camp area, and then the rest camp's over the brow of that where those trees are, and then it winds around that left side of the lake there, and you can see the Marco Polo Road going on through, and it gets larger there because there's a road been constructed for the purpose of supplying some of our troops that were south of there. This is the rest camp, more of a bigger extended view of it. This is on the Marco Polo Road, and there's a little shrine there as it comes up the hill. Now that's getting pretty close to 10,000 foot level. That Marco Polo Road's been there so long, some of those stones are worn 4 inches deep. I wish I had snuck up close and taken a picture of it just to show how deep they were. But this is very arid here. It could have been probably reforested. There was scrub pine around on it, but it didn't, you can see down below that the trees flourished there, but above here they didn't either care to plant them or they just didn't flourish. That's a group of merchants bringing their merchandise up the Marco Polo Road. You'll see it came through Kunming. I'll show you a portion of it just outside of Kunming. There's a lot of those that pack things like that. That's where the stones were worn so deep, I suppose, because of the struggle coming up there. Here's our rest camp. And on the left there, you can see where that trail was going up in there. Then in the back there, you can see the French Indochina Railway. It makes a mark right across the middle there. You can see where they spilled over some rock, cutting that cut there. Dark spot there. Train got through there a few times a day. This is the soil, you can see how red it was, even according to the early sunrise there. It made it a little redder, of course, but you see the shadows and the relief of the hills in behind there. They were easily above 10,000 feet on the top of them. There's a little village down there, and then you can see the railroad cut up above. Now, this is a little spot on the end of, well, one on the east side of, or I don't know which direction, anyway, coming into the main part of Kunming on Chennault Street, where they had a pillbox, a policeman standing on top of it. You see on the right there, that little building, that was an empty lot when I come there, and it was a pie-shaped lot, and they built a bank on it, pie-shaped, several stories high. It's really interesting how they used that land. Here's one of the main streets in Kunming, or in the Kunming city. It's toward the center of town, and it's quite ornate gate there. It's very ancient. I'm going to center that just a little bit better. Anyway, it's there's a traveling peddler coming down there with this, I don't know whether it's a restaurant or whether it's goods or not. His back going down the street. On the left you see some Chinese soldiers. On the right you see a rickshaw. In behind that is the ancient, real ancient part of Kunming. Very ancient. Here's a funeral. And you see remember white color is their mourning color. A pretty wealthy guy had died. His funeral, Mr. Wong told me, cost $750,000, and that's quite a bit of money in those days, even American. There's a float that was carried on their shoulders. They didn't have a mechanized hearse. They didn't use that type of thing over there in the funeral. They just carried them on a bunch of long pole with bearers on the sides. Here's some rice, just been ready for it to be drained and dried, cured on the vine, you might say, before they harvest it. That's a little posy alongside of the drainage ditch, right next to the rice field. There's a little boy there. He's has some broken rocks there. They were making paths, so we didn't sink down into it. And those are sort of a base. Red Cross Club is right there on the edge there. And those were big boulders taken off of the mountain. They're all beaten up by hand. They have 1,000 peasants out there hammering away at them. That's looking from my barracks, or my hostel as they call it. Actually, it wasn't a barracks like we have in the United States. Looking toward the airfield. And that's the West Mountain, or Shishan, in the background. Our airfield is just on the other side of those little buildings there. You can't tell it's there when I look. Of course, it got past the sensor in that situation. Here's at WWII State Park. You can see the typical Chinese horticulture and architecture in that little bridge. Here's a typical little village, and of course they go through this gate, and couldn't afford apparently the idols to scare people off, so they had ferocious images like the idols painted on the wall on the right hand side going through that gate. There's a village where they do some dehydrating. Dehydration over there for curing vegetables and things like that was quite extensive, even before it got popular here in this country. And we had it pretty popular here for a while. There's rest camp again, a little plane dropping the mail, flown in from the airfield, which was about 30 miles away, I think it was. A little sailboat there, and then a boat, that white one there in the middle was about an 18-foot boat. We used a four-cylinder German motor to put around in the lake bed. There's when I was out in that boat, I took a long-distance shot of the rest camp on the far side there in the center. There's Chinese soldiers. They stood guard around our place during the night while we slept. We didn't do any guard duty there at all. That's the good glory of the rest camp. Those benches were made of stone. That's the mighty warrior himself. Had one of those butchy haircuts, short hairs, and my shoes were, you can't tell too much there, but I only had one pair of shoes and they were worn out. My feet were so big that they could only issue me one pair as I left. And I wore them out down there in China, and China shoemaker had to use blown out P40 tires to re-sole them. And of course it was so stiff that they wouldn't hold. I had to wear my boots, rubber boots over the top of them in a wet situation. Feet got dirty as the mud or the dust come through the soles. Of course in muddy weather I wore those other boots. My jacket had worn out too, and the hospital tailor put a leather collar on it and some leather lining on the sleeves, because we didn't have enough clothing. I couldn't get reissued any more clothing. Of course, I didn't go first grade up first class up there anyway. I had fatigue pants on, and the jacket was the only thing I had over there to keep me warm. Of course, that wasn't our dress uniform. When I went to town, I had a different uniform, woolies and so forth. Position in the States I can still wear. There's a little merchant transaction next to the little pony there. That's the mighty warrior with his M1 carbine. I think I fired 3 shots out of it all the time I ever had it. In my fatigues there. I think that's the only place I shot 3 shots. All the time I had the gun. There's a normal form of transportation. See, it's quite primitive area. Of course, we finally got mechanized vehicles in there. Well, of course, we had ours. Chinese had charcoal burning gas burners that made trucks go. They had about 1/4 the horsepower, which they were entitled to have if they had gasoline. There's the old patriarch and his great-grandson, or otherwise, so anyway, descended. Doctor told him to keep away from tobacco, and that long pipe there he's puffing away at. Here's another section of the Marco Polo Road. That bridge is on the Marco Polo Road. It was just down the road from us a ways. It extended over the hills alongside our rest camp and then down. I don't know where it went from there, but it extended out from China. There's another load of fertilizer coming down the main street there by the village, up by the rest camp. There's a little fellow playing with his sword. He wanted his picture taken. His mask. There's a pagoda that's in Kunming. Those stories of the pagoda are only about 3 feet high. I think pagodas were extended up in the air more or less to guide travelers toward the city. They didn't seem to have too much religious significance. But they might have had. This was a pretty run down pagoda. You can see the brush growing out of it on top. There's another pagoda in a poorly kept cemetery for soldiers. Well, everything, the roofs are curved like that because evil spirits can't travel on curved surfaces. I guess is the reason. There's a cigarette merchant down on the main street, or one of the streets in Kunming. There's a religious supply house. Those paper pigs, paper chickens, paper ducks, things like that they burn on the ancestors of the grave. Have something to live on in the hereafter. There's an delicatessen. You wouldn't want to eat anything off of it. They had flies all around there. Just wouldn't want to be contaminated with the disease they carry. There's a tomb. Mr. Wong's wife was a friend of one of General Wong, is what he was. A pretty good sized political figure. He helped free that part of China from the Manchu dynasty. And he became quite wealthy, I guess, and they had his tomb built for him when he died. Anyway, Mr. Wong's wife was a friend of his, one of his wives. And because of that, we were allowed to come in and see his tomb. It was a private place, private property. Here's a little temple out in the wilds. Here's a little boat that rice straw brought in to Kunming on one of the canals that come into the city. There's that village again. You can see where the rice is planted thick, been bigged up and transplanted. In the background, you can see that stone. They roll that over soybeans to harvest the soybeans from their pods, or beat dried rice straws. I mean, you know, after the rice and the turd dried, and thresh the rice. You see the adobe construction of the houses there. Here's a merchant that comes through the villages selling whatever he can. Now this was a surprise. This is an old coal mine, dug just about like a well. A very low grade coal. It wasn't hard at all. But you could hear the digger down below there, and he kai-eyed something out in Chinese, and they wheeled it up and over the hill there. From there was a petroleum engineer that had been trained in America, and petroleum engineer was converting that stuff into gasoline. And gasoline was worth $25 a gallon at that time. It was a black market item, and he was making some money off of that, I guess, by converting that coal into gasoline synthetically. There's looking at through the bushes, and on the right-hand side, in the lower corner, is a little cactus. There was a Chinese wedding I was invited to. He worked in the bank, and I don't know what her background was. It was a pretty fancy wedding, I think, for Chinese. I didn't eat anything there. The main course was chicken gut soup with chicken legs in it. It didn't appeal to my taste at all. I might have had a cookie or something of that type, but I just couldn't eat that stuff. There's the musicians at the wedding. There's looking down the street, one of the side streets in Kunming. Off in the back there you see a tower. Well, that's the governor's palace was in there, and they went to the state government and provincial government. See, Kunming was a provincial city or capital of Yunnan Province. Here's another little temple. So a lot of the temples were converted into schools. They were not used. They didn't have any priesthood used around. There's two kind of religions there, Taoist and Buddhist. I think Taoism and Buddhism are about equal in followings. There's way up in the hills. We got up from rest camp, walked way up in the hills there. Must be very close to 10,000 feet there. Ambitious, weren't we, huh? We walked up the railroad part of the way, and then of course went down into the valley, and we kept on climbing it. That Marco Polo Road went up into that area too. Here's another shot of Black Dragon Pool that positioned away to. There's Mr. Wong and his family, his wife, two children. He had a girl and a boy. He spoke English very well. His wife didn't speak English, but she sure could. A little stone bridge there, and a dog pond, Low State Park that was. That's myself, Mr. Wong. Yeah, it's the same guy. It's when I was just got my camera, I think, and I was just first acquainted with him. I hadn't gotten any rank yet. Finally ended up staff sergeant. There's Mr. Wong and Mr. Chi. There's the tall one in the middle there. And I don't remember the names of the others. Mr. Chi was a photographer. There's the men sitting by themselves. They were upper class, you might say. They weren't rich by any means, but they were comfortable compared to the rest of the Chinese around there. And there was a few that were pretty high up in money.